For decades now, the internet has been a place where theories, some strange, some terrifying, and some just plain silly, are born and passed around like urban legends at a campfire. But among the sea of ideas floating around, there's one that rises above the rest. Not because it's rooted in history or evidence, but because of how deliberately absurd it is. And yet somehow, it still managed to take off like wildfire. Today we're exploring a theory that, at first glance, seems laughable. And to be honest, it kind of is. But the fact that it exists, and the fact that some people might actually believe it, tells us something much deeper about our world, our culture, and the strange way truth and fiction blend online. You've seen them in your backyard, perched on power lines, flying in V formations overhead. But what if they weren't what they seemed? What if birds aren't real? Yes, that's the actual name of the theory. Birds aren't real. You might have seen the phrase spray painted on a wall, worn on a t-shirt, or shouted from the rooftops by someone holding a protest sign. And for years, it's been the rallying cry of a movement that's hard to explain, but impossible to ignore. At the heart of it is one bold claim, that the birds we see every day aren't living creatures at all, but instead high-tech government surveillance drones designed to spy on the population. The theory goes like this. In the mid-20th century, somewhere between Cold War paranoia and the dawn of the surveillance age, the US government decided it needed a new way to watch its citizens, something invisible, something mobile, something that could be anywhere at any time. And what better cover than the birds? They're everywhere. They're ignored. No one questions a pigeon on a park bench. And so in secret, the government began wiping out the real bird population, systematically, covertly, until not a single feathered creature was left untouched. The number often thrown around? 12 billion. That's how many birds were allegedly taken out and replaced by mechanical replicas. These robot birds, according to believers, are equipped with cameras for eyes, audio surveillance in their beaks, and motion detectors in their feet. They recharge by sitting on power lines. They follow you on your morning jog. They track you on your drive to work, they listen in on private conversations and feed all that data to powerful, invisible agencies in underground bunkers. And before you dismiss it entirely, yes, there are receipts. Supporters point to supposed declassified documents, sketchy-looking blueprints, and photos of political figures from the 60s and 70s standing next to strange bird-like machines. Some of them swear they've seen birds malfunction, flapping their wings without flying, repeating the same motion over and over like a corrupted video file. There's even a character named Eugene Mason who appears in multiple videos, claiming to be a former government engineer, describing in detail how he helped design the first prototype of the robotic Seagull surveillance unit in 1963. He even claims they initially experimented with disguising them as hawks, but people noticed the aggressive behavior, so they pivoted to pigeons. The theory doesn't stop there. There's a fake CIA timeline posted online that outlines when each species was supposedly replaced. Doves in the late 60s, robins in the 80s. Even owls weren't spared, they just got upgraded night vision tech. And while all of this might sound like the plot of a Netflix satire, there are people, real people, who treat it seriously. They share stories online, they comment on bird behavior, they theorize about firmware updates being pushed via 5G towers. But here's where it gets interesting, because none of it is real. The birds aren't real movement is not a genuine conspiracy theory. It's a performance, a satirical campaign created not to spread fear, but to parody fear itself. The idea was born in January 2017. Peter McIndoe, then a college student in Memphis, found himself watching a protest unfold from a second-story window. As counter-protesters began to swarm the streets, trying to hijack the message of the Women's March, Peter grabbed a poster board, scribbled the words "birds aren't real," and walked outside. It was absurd, it was random, and that was the point. He wasn't trying to start a movement. He wasn't even trying to be funny, really. He was making a statement about the chaos of the moment, about how sometimes people will latch onto anything, no matter how nonsensical, if it helps them feel like they're part of something. And then it blew up. People started taking photos, sharing them, making memes. Within days, the phrase began appearing in unexpected places. On college campuses, in TikTok videos, painted on the sides of vans, it spread like wildfire, not because people believed it, but because they wanted to believe it, if only for the joke. Peter, sensing something bigger was happening, decided to run with it. He stayed in character. He built a fake history for the movement. He filmed mockumentaries, created merchandise, launched a website filled with deliberately ridiculous evidence. Over time, the lore expanded, pulling in fictional CIA operatives, fake bird factories, and cartoonishly evil government plots. He even brought in collaborators. One of them, Cameron Kasky, was no stranger to conspiracy theories. As a survivor of the Parkland school shooting in 2018, Kasky had been accused of being a crisis actor, a fake person planted by the government to push an agenda. He'd seen firsthand how terrifying and dangerous misinformation could be. So when he joined the Birds Aren't Real movement, it wasn't just for laughs, it was personal. For many of its creators, the movement became a way to shine a light on how conspiracy theories form, and how quickly people will believe something when it's presented with confidence, repetition, and just enough pseudoscience to sound real. But here's the twist. Despite being satire, the line between parody and reality started to blur. Some people really began to believe the theory. Not ironically, not as a joke, earnestly. And that's what makes this story so strange and so important. Because Birds Aren't Real was never about deceiving people. It was about showing how easily people can be deceived. How the same tools used to spread real disinformation, convincing visuals, confident speakers, cherry-picked facts, can be weaponized, even in jest. Peter McIndoe has said in rare interviews that one of his biggest concerns was making sure the joke never became too realistic. They were constantly walking a tightrope, ridiculous enough to be obviously fake, but structured enough to mimic a real movement. And in that balancing act, they held up a mirror to society. What does it say about us that even a theory this outlandish could go viral? What does it say that in a world where truth feels harder and harder to define, people are eager to believe that the birds outside their window are actually spying on them? Birds Aren't Real is more than a meme. It's a cultural artifact, a parody that exposed how vulnerable we are to misinformation and how satire can sometimes feel more real than reality. So the next time you see a pigeon staring at you a little too long, maybe don't panic. But maybe, just maybe, ask yourself, why are we so quick to believe the unbelievable? And what happens when the joke becomes something more? If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the internet's strangest movements, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below with the weirdest theory you've ever heard. Trust me, we've got plenty more where this came from. And remember, stay curious, because out here, the truth might be stranger than fiction.